Welcome back to the channel. This is Vintage Classic Solutions. I'm your host, EJ Parker. Thanks for checking in. Today we're live. We're looking at primitive storage items, like buckets. Let me get my lighting set up here for you. Primitive storage items. So like old school buckets, kegs, things like this. Let's see if we can light a little better. This is an old apple butter keg or apple butter kettle. We'll look at that. I got a lot of stuff. Let me show you this. I gotta get this on this stream. This has been a very popular item within my collection, I guess. I think it's for sale too, actually. I have no room. All right. So check this out. This is old. Check this out. Now, what is it? You think it's a bucket? It's a piggin. What's a piggin? You're looking at it. Got stuff everywhere. This is a piggin. This is a bucket probably from around 1870, maybe a little later, maybe a little earlier. So basically a piggin's a bucket with an elongated stave for like a handle, right? This is your handle. These are used for, farm agricultural purposes, feeding the pigs, things like that. You can see it's got great detail. This metal hoop, and it's like a wrought iron hoop, and it's all wood, construction. Besides that, handmade. It's got a ton of character. It doesn't hold water. I think I tested it over the summer in my series, Will It Hold Water? But it's like for grain, right? It's got a ton of character. Usually you can what helps you decipher the age is usually the metal work. If it looks, really old, typically it's wrought iron. It's handmade in the 19th century, give or take. All right, thanks for checking in. We're looking at primitive antique storage items. So let's look at this. I collect buckets, but I collect bottles. You've probably seen a few of those on my channel. But check this out. What in the hell is that? Anybody know? Hello from Brazil. All right. Hello from Brazil. This is, from what I can decipher in my research, this is like a water well bucket, right? I got this on eBay from an antique dealer over the summer. It does hold water. This is an amazing piece. This has tons of primitive character. It's all metal. It's got these old school rivets. This is wrought iron. If you can see the detail there, it's just spectacular. It's all janky and kind of like asymmetrical. It's almost like a top hat, right? But it's from what I can tell, it would be on a rope probably, and just dunked in the well. And I'm guessing these, unless anyone knows better, this extended rim on the bottom, I'm guessing is so like when on the way down the well, it wasn't destroyed, hitting the corners on the way up and down. That's my guess. This thing cost me, I don't know, I think it was around $120. But you just don't see things like this that often. At flea markets, you'll find galvanized. I have a lot of galvanized buckets and implements. But when it comes to something like this, the rivets and the handle, and if you look closely, like this hardware, that's all handmade. This is not like machine made stuff. This is all handmade. This is from New England, so that's the oldest stuff you will find in the United States that that's manufactured this style would be, you know, in New England. That makes the most sense. So that's where that came from. I love this thing. It does hold water. It's all metal. You can see it has some old white paint. So I think this was painted at one point. Collectors love the white paint. Collectors love old paint, and just for aesthetic reasons, and it also adds value. It's just a little bit of paint, but I love this thing the way it looks. Just that metal. It's like a steampunk, lunchbox, kind of like. So that's awesome. Let's look at. Need some coffee. I hope you're doing well. My day's off and running. It snowed a lot last night. I live in Ohio. We got a ton of snow, so I'm doing a lot more YouTube live today, just to share with all you just some unique items you might enjoy. So check this out. You know what this is? Sounds pretty good. What note is that? I don't know. So this is an apple butter kettle. This is made of copper. This is from the Midwest of the United States, where apples grow in abundance. This is great. So what is an apple butter kettle? Well, a large kettle, usually made of copper. Excuse me. And you would just put apples in here, right? And maybe sugar, put it over a low flame, and you would mash the apples, you and your family and your neighbors. A communal event to make apple butter. And apple butter was a way to preserve your apples for the winter, right? So you would make apple butter to preserve, and this is what you use. Now, these were also used in trade with the Native Americans. I have some textbooks or some books devoted to, you know, Native American trade items, and this is an item that was traded with Native Americans just for, I mean, and I can see why. It's just an amazing utilitarian item, right? What do you think? This is in my eBay store right now. If you want to buy it, I think it's affordable. It's like under 100 US dollars. This probably dates from around 1870, the United States Civil War era, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later. It does have a maker's mark somewhere. I've featured this before on my channel. Yeah, it does. It's something brass kettle. I can't read right now. Something, I can't see it clearly in this light. But it's got a maker's mark. That's a cool thing. Brass and copper always sells really well and just looks great. All right, this thing up next. Check this thing out. Look at this bulbous, weird object. What is this? This is a primitive stoneware beer bottle. Do you see that? It's got a maker's mark. This is actually from Manhattan. This is from around, I think, 1870-ish, or maybe even earlier. I have a YouTube short devoted to this. This gets a lot of attention just because of the way it looks. I mean, I found this at a thrift store recently. It's really thick stoneware. These were used for pressurized beverages because they are just so thick. Like this is like it's heavy, substantial, and bulbous. It's a beer brewery out of Manhattan. Pretty interesting. Now, decorators love these because, I mean, you put a sunflower in there, it looks great, right? Around the fall time, it's a cool piece. The price of these things, they can range. I have another one that's from the Ohio area, Akron area. These can range from $40 to $70 or $85, a little more, a little less, depending upon, you know, the provenance and maker's marks and all that good stuff. All right, let's move along. So I have to feature this, of course. What is this? This is my new favorite thing. This is my circa 1620, 1630 Dutch onion bottle. This is an antique bottle that is 400 years old. Can you believe that? I still can't wrap my head around that. It's amazing, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful. It's probably spent some time underwater. I love it. So this is a utilitarian, primitive glass object, right? It's primitive. This goes way back. So I mean, what was you? I mean, glass was invented, BCE. I think like Phoenicians maybe invented glass, or the no, I think it was the Egyptians. It goes way back, and then the Romans got glass manufacturing down pretty well to manufacture, utilitarian items, and then in the fall of Rome, during the Middle Ages, glass kind of faded. A lot of the trade broke down, trade routes, so a lot of the raw ingredients needed to make glass weren't available. So it was glass making was done like on a small scale within villages and towns, but it was nothing like it was in Rome. It was like just like low quality, like poor quality stuff. And then pockets popped like the Venetians and Italy, certain spots in Europe, the Islamic Renaissance, I think the Golden Era. I think that predated the Venetian glass movement. But then from around 1600 through around 1880, you had bottles like this, free blown black glass bottles of various shapes and dark muddy colors that were used throughout the world during trade. Now, I mean, this being from the year 1630, it's probably, I mean, it was most definitely brought over on an old wooden boat, right? Possibly Native Americans could have possessed this and reused it. I mean, there's just endless amounts of things to think about. The history that this has seen, it's amazing, right? I'm sure a Native American would find this very useful if they were to find it, because I mean, and it's a useful object. So this has been really fun to muse off of. I just can't get over it. You're gonna be seeing a lot more of this, so you just gotta deal with it. My name is EJ Parker. Thanks for checking in here at Vintage Classic Solutions. While I sip my coffee, what's next, you ask? This, the classic, the durable, utilitarian. This is the little brown jug. Say hello, folks, to the little brown jug. It's mundane, yet it is utilitarian in form and function. This has complete the corncob pipe. That is not vintage. That was just something I just stuck in there. But I found this, I think, on the side of the road. It's in my eBay store right now. This probably dates from the late 1800s or the early 1900s, probably for whiskey or moonshine. It's a very, very, very dark glaze on it. Now, what is stoneware? This is made of stoneware, right? It's thick, it's heavy, pretty durable. So stoneware is clay basically fired at a very high temperature. How high? About 2,000 degrees, I think, Fahrenheit. So, hence the name stoneware. So it's clay dug out of the ground that's fired at a very high temperature to make this, which is almost like a stone. I think it started in a lot of these manufacturing process started in Germany during like the early medieval times, and it was a challenge historically for manufacturers to reach those high temperatures to make stoneware. So that's something I just read in a textbook, but it makes sense. 2,000 degrees, I think Fahrenheit, that's pretty hot. You want to get that clay to become like stone, and that's really what it feels like. It feels like stone. I couldn't imagine a 6-pack or a 12-pack of beer. This is an old beer bottle from, I think, around 1860, give or take. From New York, from Manhattan, I think the Lower East Side to be precise. But it's probably weighs a couple pounds. So you imagine a 12-pack of these, and then taking the garbage out. Can you imagine that? Look at this thing. Check it out. It's got a maker's mark right there. And again, decorators love these. You put a sunflower or whatever. It's got a very unique look. Again, the price range around 40 to 80 bucks. If it's got a maker's mark, it's always worth a bit more because it gives you more provenance. So that's fun. Let me think what else. Oh, I gotta show you this. Check this out. So I love utilitarian items. I love the simplistic design and the beauty, form and function together. check this out. This is, it almost looks like water, right? Look at the swirl. This is enamelware. This is like Berlin enamelware from very, very early 1900s or possibly late 1800s. I found these in Sears and Roebuck catalogs from like 1901, I think. This is great. Enamel is a process of metal coated with crushed glass that's fired at a high temperature to create like this coating, right? And that was done because I can just talk for days. I can just rattle off. So that was done because what plagued mankind was metallic tasting food. Pewter and metal, various kinds. When you put your food in it, when you cooked in it, it made the food taste like metal, metallic. So this coating of enamel, which was again pioneered in Germany, I believe in the early Middle Ages. I forget, but Middle Ages around then. It was metal coated with like a glass powder, and then you fire it, and then it melts, and it becomes what you see here, like this glossy, shiny coating, which also prevents the metal from rusting. Right. So collectors love these just because you can see how cool it looks. That blue swirl. Collectors love the blue swirl. You can see why. I found this at an antique mall for I think around $10. It's in my eBay store right now if you want to take this home with you. Ton of characters. It's got a few holes in it, small ones in the bottom, like right there. It's a quite small hole, but it's a great old piece. This got the antique store ladies kind of oohing and on when I brought it up to the counter. So that's always a good sign when the antique store ladies are excited about the object that you discovered, right? That's how I look at it. All right. So we got that. Thanks for checking in. My name is EJ Parker. This is Live Vintage Classic Solutions. Primitive containers. Utilitarian, like this. This amazing bucket, or actually it's a piggin. It's a primitive American piggin. Piggins don't have that handle. They have this elongated stave to go feed the pigs, right? Hence the name piggin. No, I'm kidding about that. I think piggin is like an old Norse term, or I forget where, but they are used to feed the pigs, or they were used, or they could still be used to feed the pigs. What else do I got? I got these. I got a lot of these in my store. Vintage milk bottles. This is hello. What are you doing? Hello. What we're doing, I'm showing a collection of primitive antique containers. My name is EJ Parker. Thanks for checking in. I'm a vintage and antique dealer. So things like this. We're live discussing, and just kind of like a show and tell. This is a beer bottle from probably around 1860, give or take. It's made of like thick stoneware. Imagine that. We're looking at those things. Things like this. This is a bottle from the year probably around 1630. So that's what we're doing. We're having fun with antiques. 1630. Can you believe that? Shakespeare could have used that damn bottle. That's the era we're talking, all right? See, you're going to get me started. I made a list. Now, because this is my new prize object. I collect bottles. I deal antique and vintage, and I also collect, which is a very dangerous, precarious line to walk. But I'm a risk taker. So what this is, this bottle was used for wine or liquor, rum, whatever, probably from around 1620. So this dates before Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart, even the Beatles. This is before all those musical geniuses, right? This is before Isaac Newton. This bottle was created before Isaac Newton. This bottle was created before electricity was harnessed. This bottle was created before the American and French Revolution, right? Where was this bottle when those things took place? And how is this not smashed over someone's head? It was probably thrown overboard a pirate ship, or it was brought over to the United States by the Dutch. This is a Dutch bottle, probably. I bought this on eBay from an antique dealer in Pennsylvania. So it could have made its way from New York to Pennsylvania, now in Ohio. It's a glorious. I found a couple of milk bottles in my garden. That's cool. Good job. You want to, depending upon where you live, within the United States, when it comes to milk bottles or Coke bottles, usually the smaller the town on the bottle, the more valuable it is. That's kind of like a rule of thumb that I've learned from YouTube, from individuals that just specifically do Coke bottles or just milk bottles. 'Cause I do all kinds of bottles. I specialize in generalization. But from what I've learned and what I've experienced as an antique vintage dealer, the smaller the town on the bottle, the more obscure town you never heard of, usually the more valuable the bottle is because it's more rare. Collectors seek that out. It's like completing a puzzle, right? A collection. So, and that got me at first when I started dealing antiques and vintage. I would see a bottle from Chicago and I'd be like, oh great, Chicago, I'll sell it, and it would just sit for like a year. Then I realized, okay, no, you got to go small. So I would small towns. So I would go out and find some really small towns I never heard of, and those bottles would sell, and they'd sell for more, and they'd sell faster. So that's a tip that I give all to you bottle collectors and dealers or whatever. I think I showed that one, but yeah. So this is the start of the show. I'm probably gonna go draw this in a little bit. This thing. I'm from England, so they were actually pretty old, but they were very, very broken as well. So there's, when it comes to bottles of this era, they're Dutch or English origin typically. And sometimes the color can help you decipher. I have a few antique, British bottles that are, rum bottles. They're probably from around 1820. Because where I live in the United States, well, you got to figure out who, besides the Native Americans, the British came over with their bottles and some of the Dutch, right? So where I live, you find Dutch or British bottles from that era, from the 17th century, give or take. People do find these bottles in the ground and privies. They dig them out. So you can find these, of course, like organically in the United States, but I'm sure there's just probably a lot more in the old world, so to say. I would love to find one of these. I bought this on eBay for $130, which in my opinion is a good deal. These can go for more, a lot more, around $250 or a lot more. I see people ask, depending upon the aesthetic beauty perceived by the buyer, like a rainbow iridescence, those people can ask like $800. I've seen people ask $1,000. So it's just like the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So if but this is what I wanted. This has the look, and enough light can get through it when I want to, for whatever purposes. Yeah, I agree. It's in very good. Yes, I agree. It's in very good condition. The sharp parts on the pontil, which is supposed to be sharp, if you can see that, that can cut you, but that's the way. It's part of the production process. I believe a little later they sanded this so it rubs smooth, but this is actually a sharp piece of glass right there. Sometimes folks that are unfamiliar think it's broken, but no, that's actually the way it should be. And then my favorite part of these old bottles usually is this lip, which is, if you can see that, it's a molten piece of glass, like a strip. They just literally wrapped around, the artisan wrapped around the top of the neck. And what that did was allow for a wire to hold in your cork, right? And that's basically it. I mean, you can just see them. That's why I love these, because they're so just unique. Everyone's different. They're all abnormal and just wonky and blumpy, and just they're just asymmetrical. All those adjectives that I love, right? The shape, it's from what I've read in my research, it's done because of to be stable on wooden ships. So when the British crossed the ocean, when the Dutch and whoever else was exploring crossed, they brought these on their boats, and while they were enjoying their beverages, these wouldn't fall over on the boats. Now the design did change over time, of course, but that the design of these conveniently helps us date these. So this is to be precise, this is an onion bottle, a Dutch onion bottle, but this is called a horse hoof because it's shaped like a horse hoof, which allows us to date these from around, from my research, 1620 through 1640, give or take. Before this, it was more bulbous and round, and later became more like a squat cylinder, like a mallet. So that's the evolution of the bottle helps us date when these bottles are from. So I know a lot of these are found in the Caribbean Ocean, Florida Keys, again, just wherever, you know, the people from the old world were coming to the new world, pirates throwing these overboard. And when they did that, usually they were doing that at, now, from what I read, they were doing that at ports. They would get to a port and then they would, for some reason, unload their old bottles. I'm not sure the logic behind that, but the silt at the bottom of the, you know, the bays or whatever would just preserve these things until divers found them. So, and it kind of gives them a nice matte finish that I like. You know, I like a nice matte, kind of dull look just because it kind of gets that gloss, that new look away. I like old things. That's why I deal vintage and antique. I don't like new things. The only new thing I really like is my iPhone because it's just so amazing. I kind of stopped my interest at 1984 as far as vintage, and then I jumped to iPhones now. But yeah, this is old for a bottle. 1620, I agree. The Wi-Fi is a little bit shaky. It may cut out again. But I think we're getting towards the end of my little live presentation of primitive containers. So we've seen buckets, piggins, and a bottle from 1620. I hope you like that. Thanks for checking in. I'll be talking to you shortly. Have a good one.